Hello everybody and welcome to my review of One Piece chapter 1033. Oda focuses on one fight and we get some huge information about a member of the Shimasuke clan, Shimasuke Kozaburo. Case in point, that's the title of this chapter. And also highlighting Zoro with a huge upgrade when it comes to his swords. And Oda made a specific point to highlight each of those swords in this chapter. Speaking of swordsmen, we start off on the cover page with Tashigi and Smoker, and I think it's an interesting choice. Number one, Tashigi and Smoker with penguins, and they're acting out as make-believe heroes against villains, and the penguins have got swords. But also the fact that Tashigi's in front of center, as well as Smoker being in the background, is an interesting choice because the first sword that Oda focuses on in this chapter is the Sandai Kitetsu, and if you remember, Tashigi was in the store when Zoro took the Sandai Kitetsu. We start off the chapter with Zoro versus King outside the Skull Dome, and obviously Zoro losing control at Emna without permission, so his hockey's being drained. So like I said, has 3 battles to overcome. This is one of them by the end of this chapter. It looks like he got a grip of it. One of the 3 problems he had to deal with, and that's obviously controlling Emna. He did that by the end of this chapter. So King sees this, he goes into attack, because King stands right in front of it, and it's like he is taunting, allowing Zoro to strike him with the sword, because Zoro pierces him, and King just detonates. He explodes, and then it cuts to the exchange between Sanji and Queen. I thought this was going to go back and forth here. The reason this is here is for Queen to hype up King, because Queen's like, "Oh, you were talking to the pirate hunter Zoro, weren't you?" And he's got no chance against King. And we get more insight as to the race, the Lunarians of the King's from. So he's a surviving Lunarian who was supposed to be eradicated from the world. First off, the fact that they were able to survive anything the world threw at them makes it seem like the Lunarians obviously did not get along with the world government. Case in point, the last time we heard about this, they lived at the top of the Red Line, which I'm wondering if that was Marijoa before the Celestial Dragons took it over. Main point is they were known as gods in the distant past, so more light as to what type of race the Lunarians were, and I'm kind of curious if the legend of Sun God Nika that we heard from Who's Who during his fight with Jinbei is actually attached to the Lunarian race. We don't really know for sure. But the fact that they were enemies of the government or the world, and also the fact that Who's Who heard about this rumor in Marijoa in the prison, and they wanted him dead. Like, they did not want him getting out with that type of knowledge. So yeah, the god who said that to him, we don't know who that was. Cuts past the Zoro versus King. Zoro, so he uses one sword style, Lion's Song, and immediately Zoro's got to dig way down deep because it doesn't do anything to King. He cuts through him, no effect. King responds with, again, another goofy facial expression, but he uses an Imperial Tempera to attack Zoro. And while this is going on, Emna's acting up again, so he's barely able to dodge. In fact, he actually does get hit. So as Zoro's being attacked, he starts losing his grip of his sword. When he gets back as a Sandai Kitetsu. And this is where Oda decides to focus in on where Zoro first obtained it back in Logtown, and also when he talked to Hitetsu about obviously the purpose of a Black Blade, but also the fact that he was the one that forged the Sandai Kitetsu. I do find it interesting how this is going on. You got King, who's by the way, he's igniting his leg on some Sanji type of deal and just kicking him into the ground. That was an interesting choice. The fact that he can manipulate his flames. I think we've seen this before. But it's interesting we didn't see that in the clash between Sanji and King. That could have been kind of cool. But he starts losing grip on the Wando Ichimonji, which obviously is a huge place in Zoro's heart with Kuina. And we also know that Shimasuke Kozaburo was the one that forged that Wando Ichimonji. The fact that it came from Wano in the first place is interesting. We actually get that. Zoro gets back the Wando Ichimonji. He's talking about how did the sword get out of Wano all the way into the East Blue, which is something we should have been asking. We're probably asking ourselves ever since we found out the one which magic came from Wano. Then King comes down with the Imperial twin blades. So Zoro gets back his other 3 swords, and then he's thinking about Emna as well. The fact that, and then this triggers the flashback to Zoro meeting Shimasuke Kozaburo like 13 years ago in the East Blue in Shimasuke Village. Dojo is called Shimasuke Dojo, where we see Kuina versus Zoro, and then this explains quite a few things. First off, Kozaburo is saying Tsunachi to Zoro. Now we know where he heard that from. The fact that Oda's highlighting this, it probably means, I'm not saying for sure that Zoro's not from Wano, because it could be possible, but we still don't know. But the fact that he's learning it from the outside, and the fact that Zoro would have to escape Wano. First off, he would have to leave the borders to Wano. It's not impossible, because obviously Kozaburo did it illegally. What we found out from Hitetsu not too long ago. We have to get that brought up again. He's described as a village geezer, but we couldn't find out that's Shimasuke Kozaburo. Zoro makes the reference as a kid that, oh, I heard you were samurai. Everybody at the dojo says that. He's like, don't talk about that because you'll get me in trouble with the Marines. I'm wondering why he left Wano illegally. Also, he has an interesting eyebrow. I'm going to point that out right now. Either way, we see Zoro training as a kid because he obviously got beat by Kuina, given the swords, which he used those swords to... When we got Zoro's flashback for the first time, we did see that he used kendos, and then he actually had swords of his own. Now we know where he got those swords from. It's from Shimasuke Kozaburo, and I'm guessing it's the same swords we saw at the start of the series, where we first saw him. He's given Zoro the rundown of how swords exist from blacksmiths that exist to cut people down. But the most important part of this dialogue is where we get each blade is like a person with a unique disposition, whose swordsman who is one who takes the sword's wild nature and bends it to their will, which is obviously a reference to what Zoro does in this chapter with Emna. And then what we found out is Shimasuke Kozaburo also forged another sword that was left in Wano, and we also found out he named it after the Lord of the Underworld, which stands for Emna. And Zoro kind of puts it together and the realization dawns on. And what we found out is that he left Wano illegally 50 years ago. By the way, which is way before Odin's time. And it looks like the Emna blade has been testing Zoro out this entire time, but because Zoro's not been strong enough, hasn't met its standards yet, he hasn't been able to wield it and turn it into a black blade until now. And he compliments Odin for like being able to wield it so easily. I doubt that's the case. I think Odin probably had to do as much, has struggled just as much. It's just he was well trained in using Emna. Zoro literally just got it end of 1 Act 2. So yeah, it was obviously going to be a daunting task to harness Emna. And then while this is going on, you got some fodder who's targeting Zoro. They're thinking about actually attacking him. And this immediately gives me the vibes we got with Katakuri and Luffy. And while the fodder are thinking about attacking him, King's like, no. And knocks him out with Conqueror's Haki, King's Haki. It's interesting. I'm wondering if Zoro's doing that too, because at one point he's not looking, but in the next panel where we see after the knocked out, he clearly is. So when we saw Luffy and Katakuri do the same thing, we saw both of them activate Conqueror's Haki. That was without question. When it comes to Conqueror's Haki and Zoro, though, Oda's been pretty vague and pretty secretive about that. It's like daunting on the lines. It's like we heard it from Kaido after Zoro wounded Kaido. It's like, oh, you have Conqueror's Haki too, and Zoro's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just wanted to leave a mark on you, and it kind of got brushed aside. There have been certain points in the series where showcase maybe he does have Conqueror's Haki. It would not be a shock, and it looks like that's the case because, and it looks like King is getting ready for this, which is also kind of cool. So it's like you've also got a king's ambition. Triggers a flashback, a panel of where he meets Luffy for the Luffy's like, the world's greatest swordsman. I wouldn't have it any other way. That's perfect for the future king of the pirates. So it goes hand in hand. And then if Zoro's here to fulfill his promises to his captain and his closest friend Kuina. So yeah, that's a great way to end the chapter. The fact that King's ambition gets mentioned by King himself, and then we also get the flashback by Shimasuke Kozaburo, a swordsman who is one who tames the swords while nature and bends it to their will. Again, that's what happens with Emna. So it looks like Emna completely transformed into a black blade. And if you look closely, the other two blades also being activated with Haki, because there's no point in Oda highlighting not only the Emna blade, but also he focuses on the Sandai Katetsu and the Wanda Winter Manji especially. And now it makes actual perfect sense the more I think about it. Oda had Zoro hand in Shusui and trade it for Emna for this moment. So yeah, because if that was already a black blade to begin with, and just because it's a black blade, it does not mean that Zoro's 3 blades are transformed into a supreme grade upon the 12 high-ranking swords in One Piece. No, that's not what this is, because Shusui, as I just mentioned, was a permanent black blade, and that's a great grade. And the only supreme grade swords that we know of are the Yaru, which is Hawkeye Mihawk's sword, the Mukura Kumigiri, which is the sword that Whitebeard had. We know Ace, which is the sword that Goldie Roger had, and obviously the Shodai Katetsu. Yeah, the fact that, yeah, those are the only 4 supreme grade swords that we know of, and it doesn't mean that Zoro has transformed his 3 blades into supreme grade. No, because that's way too soon. That will happen by the end of the series, but it's a huge feat for Zoro to like transform into a black blade. It looks like the Wanda Winter Manji and the Sandai Katetsu got an upgrade too. So I do like the fact that it's ended the same way the beginning of the final round with Luffy versus Katakuri, with Katakuri and Luffy knocking out the father. After Flambe interfered, Katakuri got pissed. Here Luffy just knocked them out so they could go at it in the final round. It looks like that's what this is, because it got more insight into King's character, because you easily attack Zoro then if you wanted to, but it's like, no, I see. They could have some sort of respect for one another. It just makes sense. So we could get some Katakuri versus Luffy level plus action in the final round between Zoro and King. So yeah, this just ignites the purpose of this fight even more. Like, Zoro's gonna have to throw everything and the kitchen sink in this fight. That's what this looks like, and it's awesome to see. Oda was gonna have Zoro transform the Black Blades by the end of the fight. Technically, you could say it's his midway fight if you want to. I don't suspect that Oda's going to focus another chapter on this fight, just because there's other aspects for Oda to focus on. So this is just another fight that has to like have more in order to wrap up towards the end of either Wano Act 3 or have it conclude during Wano Act 4, if there is a Wano Act 4. So yeah, I just like the way Oda did this chapter. We got more lore about King and also Zoro's connection with the Shimotsuki clan. In this case, it's Kozaburo. So that's going to do it for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like the review if you did it. A thumbs up, I appreciate that. Subscribe to for more One Piece. Catch you guys later. Thanks, guys. Bye.